Since we were last with you, spoiler alert, England have won the Ashes playing good, positive cricket, and Australia have lost the Ashes playing bad, positive cricket. But Australian cricket is never down for long, and it bounced straight back in the Women's Ashes Test in Canterbury, a game that involved an elongated battle for supremacy, periods of almost heroically slow batting and grinding negativity that would have had Kent Stodgemeister Chris Tavares himself purring in his thankfully and rightfully still empty grave with approval. Plus, there were even some high-quality rain delays, everything that Test match cricket is supposed to be about. It even ended with a catastrophic England collapse and a crushing defeat. This is the kind of Test cricket that made people like me fall in love with the game. A new franchise T20 league is imminent for the women's game in England, so clearly England's women already being corrupted by the thought of something like the IPL. It's always the IPL's fault. 10 South Africa A players were left thoroughly sick in India, as were hundreds of millions of Indian cricket fans after respectively a nasty bout of food poisoning and a nasty bout of defensive batting technique poisoning, as wily old schemester Rangana Herath ran through India's batting lineup in the Galle Test match like whatever South Africa A had for dinner ran through South Africa A. And to put India's subsidence after taking a first innings lead of almost 200 into context, you know that a loss is bad when, after you lose, you turn to Stuart Binney as your Test match saviour. It's like reacting to your house burning down by making a papier-mâché fire engine. It is unlikely to convince anyone that you really know how to make things better.
So, Frederick, the Ashes. Let's just talk about what's happened in the last 2 Test matches, if that's not too much trouble with you, Frederick. Frederick?
There's something magical about Sri Lankan cricket at the moment. You'd know that if you weren't too busy ignoring them.
What, have you not seen my Nuwan Pradeep tattoo?
I know you've got, I thought you had your ECB face on. Since the Big Three takeover, they've had a massive come-from-behind win against England, who had just stolen their coach. Now they're up against, a team that is worth, I don't know, conservatively $1.9 trillion more than them. And they've beaten them from come-from-behind position as well. I mean, essentially, Sri Lanka have used a bank clerk to bring down, the world's richest cricket empire. Okay, it's just a Test victory, but it's not just a Test victory. It's Rangana Herath making Indian cricket look so silly they had to go to Stuart Binney. Yes, that is our second Stuart Binney joke, but Herath is the sort of guy that you would never ever put in the lead of an action film. He is the opposite of action, he's the opposite of sex, he's the opposite of anything like that, and yet he's so awesome and so perfect. But when it comes down to it, he's the little invisible engine that could.
Well, here's a stat on that little invisible engine, Jared. Since 2009, so Sri Lanka have bowled themselves to victory in the 4th innings of 9 tests. Herath has played in 8 of them. He's been leading wicket-taker in 6 of those 8, including 5 5-wicket hauls and a 4 for 11 or something. A total of 37 wickets, average 15. All the other Sri Lankan bowlers combined in those games that he's played in, 39 wickets, average 30 in those 4th innings. And the leading wicket-taker, apart from Herath, Damika Prasad, with 8, 5 of which were at Leeds. So I think what I'm saying in a long-winded numerical way is he's been quite an important player for Sri Lanka over the last few years. The victory was set up by Dinesh Chandimal's brilliant second innings 162 not out, which gave Herath the chance to tweakle and twerkle Sri Lanka to victory. I believe those are the technical terms for his canny old bowling. Chandimal, now, he's always seemed one bad test away from being dropped from the Sri Lankan Test team, or quite often one bad one-day international away from being dropped from the Sri Lankan Test team. I think he now must have given himself at least 2 bad ODIs grace from being dropped from the Sri Lankan Test team.
Chandimal's innings was also pure Sri Lanka in that no one will remember it because everyone will remember Herath and how bad India were. But, I mean, I'm going to go out on a limb. I think Chandimal is probably the little invisible engine that could.
And that just shows that in modern Test match cricket, you need 2 little invisible engines that could to really have any hope of success.
Here at 2 Men Out, we are always in search of the perfect cricketer. So we decided to take the 2 4th innings heroes from recent Test matches, Elise Perry and Rangana Herath, and politely request them to breed. Due to legal, personal and logistical complications, this request was firmly rejected. Instead, we took DNA swabs of the 2 players from the scorecards of those 4th innings. That's how scorecards work, it's why cricket is magic. We mixed them up in a laboratory with some special yeast and created the perfect, unstoppable, hybrid, half Perry, half Herath cricketing hero.
Feeling dizzy, Frederick?
No. Why should I be?
Well, I just assumed you spent most of the last couple of weeks spinning in your grave about the way your boys have played since Lord's.
Don't want to talk about it, WG.
WG? WTF, more like.
Here. Haven't seen anything collapse that quickly since Lady Hawke walked into the wrong dressing room at the wrong time at Lord's and saw why I was really called the Demon.
Yes. Yes, I've had cigars that have lasted longer than that innings in Nottingham.
Yes. Can we stop talking now?
Certainly, Frederick. It's been a pleasure.
There are many reasons that you lose a cricket game. There's obviously cricket reasons, and then there are less important reasons. Anushka Sharma, for instance, with India.
Yes, I mean, clearly bowled terribly in the World Cup semi-final, solely to blame for me.
And Ian Healy, Rebecca Wilson, the Courier Mail all believe that the Australian Ashes wags are the reason that Australia lost the Ashes. Andy, any thoughts?
Well, it's always been this way, Jared, ever since King Harold blamed his defeat at the Battle of Hastings on the fact that he allowed his soldiers to bring their wives and all of their children with them onto the battlefield. That's a fact. Check the tapestry. It's very hard to know exactly how much the families are to blame. There's no real filter on StatsGuru for that, and believe me, I have checked to the detriment of my own married life. But here at Two Men Out, we do have exclusive access to the transcripts of the Australian players' internal monologues as recorded on Hawkbrain. That's, of course, the Hawkeye spin-off. And it could prove actually even more significant than Hotspot in detecting edges, just seeing that guilt. Even in Stuart, what even works on Stuart Broad. Anyway, here is the transcript from David Warner's second innings dismissal at Trent Bridge. This is what was going through his head. Watch the ball, don't try that stupid flip off the hip that has to defy physics to work. Watch the ball. Oh, I wonder if Candice has enough baby wipes to last the rest of the week. I knew I should have got some more when I had the chance at the shop. Oh no, I have just attempted that stupid flip off the hip. I am now out. Oh no, if only I'd stayed single, I would be averaging 85 in Test cricket, so maybe there is actually something in it, Jared.
In 2013-14, England didn't take their wags out for the Ashes until Melbourne, and they'd already been smashed around the head like Justin Langer by that stage, so it didn't really matter. This time, the wags are the problem. But let's look at this in a slightly more scientific way. I've seen the wags a fair bit during this Ashes. As far as I can tell, they don't have hard hands. They know when to leave the ball. They don't play ridiculously attacking shots for no reasons. They can at times understand English conditions. And the only wag on this tour that I know who's played in a Test match is Alyssa Healy. She's won her Test match. She's 1 from 1. You know what I mean?
With Mitchell Starc in attendance.
He was right there.
Right, which suggests that Australian cricket needs more boyfriends and fewer girlfriends and wives. Is that what you're saying?
I think Australia needs more boyfriends, fewer girlfriends and wives, and also more batting.
Batting, practicing the batting.
No,
are you saying that practicing cricket could actually be more important than having or not having wives and girlfriends?
Although, interestingly, I think if we track techniques over the last few years, since women have become emancipated and have been unchained from the kitchens, batting techniques have really fallen down. So maybe it is the women's fault.
Yeah. Is that what you wanted, Pankhurst? Is that what you wanted?
Did Australia lose the Ashes because of their wives and families?
Yeah.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
So, Jared, we've reached the ends of the Michael Clarke captaincy era. It's had more ups and downs than an emotional teenage basketball, and also the end of a batsman of old school Fred Astaire-footed brilliance who's played, I think, some of the finest Test match innings of his era. Are you going to miss him?
Miss is an interesting word, is it? I mean, there's no way I can talk about Michael Clarke and not go on for about 93 hours. But essentially, there was something that you could never quite connect with him as a human being. And sometimes that's what we want our superstars either to be Michael Jordan sort of perfection, or we want them to be flawed Shane Warne awesomeness.
You have both of those qualities.
Obviously.
Yep.
And somehow Michael Clarke was trying to get to this perfect image and was flawed, but not flawed in a way that anyone felt comfortable with. I think he's one of the best fielders I've ever seen. I thought he was a very good attacking captain at times. He won an Ashes 5-0. He won in South Africa 2-1 to reclaim the #1. He won a World Cup title. And yet, I'm pretty sure right now in a lot of Australian bars, people are going, good riddance. That's kind of his career right there.
So, Doc, there was a women's professional team back in our day, in the good old 1880s.
Yes, the original English lady cricketers. Remember them well. Played in front of crowds of thousands, until their manager ran off with all the money.
Wasn't you, was it, Doc? You weren't afraid of earning a bob or two?
Earning, Frederick. Earning.
Of course, Doc, of course. So, what did you think of the test?
Some of it was good, some of it was bad, some of it was interesting, and some of it wasn't.
Which test were you talking about there?
Almost all of them. Ever played by men and or women.
Michael Clarke defended his team's attemptedly aggressive batting. Oh, sorry, hang on, I'm just getting some legal advice. Alleged batting, yeah, best cover our backs on these things. Clarke said after the game, "You live by the sword, you die by the sword." Yes, but it is also true that if you practice just a little bit harder with your sword and don't just recklessly swing your sword about willy-nilly at the first thing that moves, and also take into account the need sometimes to block your opponent's sword swipes with some form of defensive sword manoeuvre, then you have a much, much greater chance of not dying by the sword, and in particular of not having your entire army hacked to pieces by the sword in the opening 90 minutes of a series-defining battle. Something to maybe factor into future Australian sword fights. Michael Clarke also said this, Jared. He said, "We can obviously improve against seam, swing and spin. I think this is a landmark moment in the history of cricket sledging. A, it's polite. B, it's aimed at himself and his own team. We all hoped sledging would change. This is a big step forward."
And also, importantly, what he hasn't said there is they're very good against straight balls.
Yep, but something to work, something to build on for the future.
I don't know, Andy. I like to remember the good times of this Ashes series. The bit before it actually had started and Australia had already won it when Mark Butcher was looking at it from behind a couch, and when Michael Clarke was introducing his players' names incorrectly and making lots of Dad's Army jokes. That was before Dad's Army came completely 100% true, and Ryan Harris and Michael Clarke and Shane Watson and Brad Haddon and Adam Voges and Fawad Ahmed and Peter Siddle, Chris Rogers and Sean Marsh might never play again. I mean, Dad's Army has basically come to life at this point.
That is Dad's Army being sent over the top at the Somme, isn't it? That's not just Dad's Army, the TV series.